Welcome to the Rugby Players Guide to France, made just for you by BrightRock. A series of top South African rugby exports who spent time playing the game in France look back at life on and off the rugby field and what it was like moving abroad to play the bounce in a new part of the world. Welcome to the Rugby Players Guide to France and to the Champs-Élysées, the sweeping avenue at the heart of the city of Paris. It's where the Tour de France finishes every year. It's home to designer stores, to hordes of tourists and to beautiful old buildings, which makes it very similar to another grand old French city, Lille, which this week we explore with another very special rugby guest. Welcome to the Rugby Players Guide to France, made just for you by BrightRock, and welcome to a really horrible winter's day in Durban, where I catch up with this week's guest as part of my mission to meet great South African rugby players who've been over to France and discovered life not just on the field, but off it as well. My guest today did exactly that. He's now back home in South Africa. Brent Russell, lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too, Dan.
It's not a bad place to call home in winter, this, is it?
No, I think this must be one of the best places in Durban, in South Africa during winter. So as you can see, we're sitting at about 25 degrees on average and not a breath of wind and the sea behind you.
A great place to be able to come back to, but you certainly weren't unhappy with your previous home, because you're one of a number of South Africans who really found a spiritual base in France.
Yeah, so we've been back for 10 years already. It's quite a long time. 10 years has flown by. Kids seem to do that to you. But before that, we lived about 6 years in France. And yeah, that's where our family started. I only got fond memories of what feels like a lifetime ago, another world.
When you first got over there, what were the big challenges? What were the big differences? What were the big change moments you had to deal with in France?
The biggest difficulty is language.
Did you have any French at all?
Not a word of French. I think I learned bonjour on the plane over. So it took us about 2 years, and knowing me, I'm English, so it took me a long time to learn Afrikaans too, you know. So I'm not very much of a language person. Where we went into Clermont, there weren't a lot of English speakers, so it really actually enforced us to grasp the language, and we ended up picking it up after a year or so properly, and really loved what French culture had to offer us.
Language and culture challenging, certainly. I'd imagine not quite so much the rugby, though, because the style of rugby that you played, that you entertained us with so much, is exactly the kind of rugby they love in France, running with the ball, playing creatively, lighting up the field with dazzling speed and skill.
Yeah, so that was the one thing that came naturally at the time. We played in a very strong team as well, so we were always up in the finals for the first 4 years that we were there. And yeah, so it was fun rugby as well. I mean, it was hard. I must admit the quality of rugby in first top 14, then Pro D2, and even the 1 year below, where I played my last year, is very tough. So it's not like where it sort of gets watered down as you go down the levels. There, the rugby is very tough, and yeah, it was fun.
You had time in Clermont. You also had time in Lille, and Lille's one of the focal points for rugby this year. Tell us a little bit about Lille.
So Lille is very flat. So it's obviously very north, more north than Paris. Funny enough, everything below Paris is rugby, and everything above Paris is football. So Lille is very well known for its football. And my favorite is that it's quite close, just a short train ride down to Burgundy, where is my favorite white wine area. So.
And that's part of the adventure that everybody who goes over to France seems to have. Yes, they're there to play rugby and they enjoy it and they give everything to it. But that ability for you with your family to see different parts of France, to explore the country, how valuable was that as an experience?
Yeah, so I think it's very central to Europe, and not only traveling in France. I mean, France has got so much to offer. I think every little town that you go to has got its own culture, it's known for something, you know. So we grew up in an area that was called, well known for truffade, which is a potato dish. And just down the road was cantal, which is cheese. So there's all these little areas that are very well known. So you could go to any town and experience an amazing culture just totally different to where you've just come from. And also being central to Europe, it was just a short train ride off to Italy, flight here or whatever. So we did quite a lot of traveling.
Two last ones to wrap up. The best memory from France on the field and the best memory off it.
So I think the best memory on the field was not that I got to play. I was very instrumental in playing in that team and got up to the quarterfinals. And on the day of the quarterfinals, my daughter was born. And so I couldn't play that game. So I was in hospital watching them play quarterfinals and then just couldn't get back into the team because they'd set their team from the quarterfinals. So we went on and won the semi-finals and the finals. So the first time in the 100-year history that Clermont Auvergne had won top 14. And so the celebrations that I got to see there were over 100,000 people sitting in a square. And that for me was quite something. Off the field, I think, obviously, living in France, having the birth of my two children there. We've got three children. We had one child when we got back. It was happy times.
Very, very happy memories, and hopefully not the only South African memories from France that bring a smile. More to come in 2023. Fingers firmly crossed. The Rugby Players Guide to France, made just for you by BrightRock. This week, Brent Russell looking back very fondly on the time he spent in France.